Imagine the year 1911. An old farmhouse in Kansas. It had no electricity, no air conditioner, no compressor humming outside the bedroom window. And yet, during a July heat wave, the house could stay 15 degrees cooler than the air outside. How could that be? The answer is, the house itself was the machine. Want to know how it worked? Here's the strange part. Most of the technology that made it work wasn't expensive. Some of it didn't cost anything at all. So what happened to it? Because old builders weren't fighting summer heat the way we do today. They weren't trying to make the entire house colder with a machine. Their method was much simpler. They were moving hot air out, keeping sunlight out, capturing cool air at night, and storing that coolness inside the walls. And the really interesting part? None of these tricks worked alone. They were designed to work together. By the end of this list, you'll see how an ordinary house from 1911 could behave like a giant passive cooling system. No complicated electronics, no compressor, just architecture and physics. Number 10, transom windows. Start with that little rectangle of glass above an old bedroom door. Most people see decoration. It wasn't. It was ventilation. The transom could be opened even when the bedroom door was closed. Hot air naturally rises, so the warm air collecting near the ceiling could escape through the transom and move toward the hallway and attic. Cooler air was pulled in lower down. The entire house began to breathe. Hotels used them, schools used them, row houses used them, and they cost almost nothing to operate. Then central air arrived. Suddenly, an open transom was a problem. It allowed conditioned air to escape. So builders sealed them, painted them shut, or stopped installing them. We kept the appearance. We lost the function. But a transom only works if there's somewhere for that hot air to go. And old builders had another trick for creating that airflow, one that might already be sitting in your house. Number 9, the double-hung window. Here's something you may have been looking at your entire life without realizing what it can do. A proper double-hung window has 2 moving sections. The bottom sash moves up, the top sash moves down. Your grandmother probably knew this. You may not. Open the bottom 6 inches, open the top 6 inches. Now something interesting happens. Cooler air enters through the bottom. Warmer air escapes through the top. 2 currents, 1 window. And if you do this on opposite sides of the house, you can create a continuous circulation loop even when there isn't much wind outside. The window isn't just a hole in the wall, it's an engine. And millions of modern homes have windows that only perform half of this job. But moving air isn't enough if the sun keeps dumping heat into the room. And this is where the old builders did something incredibly simple. They stopped the heat before it ever reached the glass. Number 8, louvered shutters. Real louvered shutters weren't just decoration. They blocked direct sunlight before it reached the glass. That's important. Once sunlight passes through the glass, the heat is already inside your house. A shutter could block the sun while still allowing air to move through its angled slats. On a brutally hot afternoon, the sun-facing side of the house could be shaded while the windows remained ventilated. The technology was simple. Wood, hinges, angled slats, and a little paint every few years. Today, decorative shutters often preserve the shape without performing the job. We kept the symbol. We threw away the function. But shutters weren't the only thing old houses used to control sunlight. There was another device that could cool your house in July and actually help warm it in winter. And it didn't require a single watt of electricity. Number 7, canvas window awnings. Look at photographs of American streets from the early 20th century. Awnings are everywhere. Storefronts, porches, south-facing windows, striped canvas hanging at an angle. And they weren't there simply because they looked nice. A properly positioned awning could block the high summer sun from reaching the window. But in winter, when the sun sat lower in the sky, sunlight could pass underneath it. The same piece of canvas could help keep a house cool in summer and allow free solar heat in winter. The physics didn't change. The building simply took advantage of them. Then air conditioning arrived. Awnings started looking old-fashioned. And they disappeared from millions of homes. But here's where the old system gets even more interesting. Because even after the sunlight was blocked, there was still one enormous problem. Where does all that rising hot air actually go? The answer is hiding above your head. Number 6, high ceilings. Walk into an old Victorian house and look up. 10 feet, 11, sometimes 12. In places like New Orleans and Galveston, even higher. People often assume this was simply extravagant architecture. It wasn't. It was engineering. Heat rises. And in a closed room, the hottest air collects near the ceiling. A high ceiling creates a much larger zone between the people and that hot layer. The people remain lower. The heat moves upward. And once it reaches the ceiling, transoms, windows, and attic openings can help carry it away. Then economics changed. Every extra foot of ceiling meant more materials, more plaster, more labor. The 8-foot ceiling became the cheaper standard, and the hot air that once lived several feet above your head was suddenly much closer to you. But old builders had another way to get rid of that hot air. And strangely enough, it was built into something most people think of as a heating appliance. Number 5, the fireplace as a summer exhaust. Everyone thinks a fireplace has one job. Old builders knew it had another. The chimney is a vertical channel through the house. Under the right conditions, opening the damper in a shaded window could allow air to move through the room and upward through the flue. Some historic ventilation systems even included dedicated channels for extracting stale indoor air. The same basic structure that helped heat the house during winter could assist ventilation during summer. No motor, no filter, no compressor, just a vertical passage and moving air. Then central heating arrived. Chimneys were sealed. Some disappeared completely. And an architectural feature that could serve 2 seasons became something many modern houses don't have at all. But what if you didn't want to wait for the chimney? What if you wanted to remove the entire day's worth of heat from the house in one shot? That's exactly what the next invention was designed to do. Number 4, the whole house attic fan. If you lived in parts of the South or Midwest before central air became dominant, you may remember the sound. Someone flipped a switch. A giant fan in the ceiling came alive, and the entire house seemed to exhale. The fan wasn't making cold air, it was replacing hot air. It pulled the day's accumulated heat out of the rooms, pushed it into the attic and out through the vents. At the same time, cool evening air rushed through open windows. The entire house could exchange its air remarkably quickly. Within a short time, a house that had baked all afternoon could approach the temperature outside. And the electricity required was only a fraction of what conventional air conditioning consumed. Then sealed houses became standard, open windows became less useful, and the whole house fan quietly disappeared. But there's an even older version of this idea, one that doesn't need a fan. It uses something every building already has, the fact that hot air rises, and old barns made extraordinary use of it. Number 3, cupolas and roof monitors. You've probably seen those little towers sitting on top of old barns, cupolas. They weren't simply there to hold weather vanes, they were exhaust ports. Hot air rises through a building and collects at its highest point. So builders placed openings there. As hot air escaped, replacement air could enter below. The building breathed. Farmers used cupolas to ventilate barns. Southern houses used similar principles. Factories scaled the idea up with roof monitors that could ventilate enormous workspaces. No electric motor was required. The geometry did the work. Modern buildings often replace these structures with turbines, mechanical fans, or static vents. And decorative cupolas still exist, but many are sealed boxes. The hat remains. The breathing system is gone. And this raises a fascinating question. What if the building didn't have a cupola at all? What if the hottest air was trapped in the middle of a narrow 3-story house? Old builders had a solution for that too, and they put it right above the staircase. Number 2, operable skylights and roof scuttles. Row houses in cities like Philadelphia, Baltimore, and Brooklyn had a serious ventilation problem. Houses were attached side by side. The middle of the building might have no windows. So old builders went upward. At the top of the staircase, they installed skylights that could open, or hinged roof scuttles. Now the staircase became a chimney. Hot air from multiple floors could rise toward the roof. Fresh air could enter through windows below. One opening could help ventilate several stories. The mechanism was incredibly simple. A hinge, a hook, a pole. That's it. But over time, roof repairs became expensive. Skylights leaked when neglected. Owners sealed them. Modern fixed skylights still bring in light, but they don't necessarily allow the house to breathe. And now we've reached the final piece, the one that makes all the other tricks work together. Because if hot air needs somewhere to escape, you also need somewhere for the cold air to enter. And old builders knew exactly where to find it. Number 1, basement windows and the night flush. Old builders treated the basement as the cold reserve of the house. Small hopper windows near ground level could be opened at night. At the same time, attic openings could be opened above. Now the entire house became one tall column of moving air. Cool air entered low. Hot air escaped high, and the house flushed itself. But something even more important happened inside the walls. Brick, plaster, stone, chimneys. All of that thermal mass absorbed the coolness of the night. It became a kind of thermal battery. Then, in the morning, the family closed the windows and shutters. The house slowly released that stored coolness throughout the day. Today, engineers call this night flush cooling combined with thermal mass. Old families simply knew when to open the house and when to shut it. And now for the part that should genuinely bother you. Modern houses didn't merely forget these techniques. We changed the entire system. We sealed houses tighter. We reduced natural air leakage. We created buildings that depend heavily on mechanical systems for ventilation and temperature control. And modern building science has a perfectly reasonable response. Build tight and ventilate right. That is sound engineering for a tightly sealed building. But here's the thing. The sealed box was a choice. There was another road. The old house didn't necessarily need to fight nature. It worked with it. The real trick was never a single invention. It was the combination. At dawn, windows closed. Shutters blocked the rising sun. Awnings kept sunlight away from the glass. High ceilings gave rising heat somewhere to collect. Transoms moved that heat toward the upper levels. Cupolas and roof openings let it escape. And at night, everything opened. Top sashes down, bottom sashes up. Basement windows open, attic openings open. Cool air poured in low. Hot air escaped high. The thermal mass stored the night's coolness. Then the cycle started again. The house was played like an instrument, and someone in the family knew how to play it. That was the technology we lost.